Hi, my name is Samantha, and I'm here to talk about borderline personality disorder, something that I was diagnosed with last December, not this past December, the December before. Um, and for anybody who may know someone or is dealing with it themselves, I'm just telling my story, and I'm going to start from the beginning. When I was 10 years old, um, I started noticing that I had some social issues. Um, I never really felt like I was myself. I always felt like I was trying to be somebody else, which at that age, a lot of kids are like that, but I think it was to the extreme where I pretty much, whatever somebody believed or thought, I would believe the same thing, even if I didn't agree with it. I just wanted to fit in. I remember um, I was friends with somebody who gave me a bunch of NSYNC posters to post on my wall, and I did like NSYNC as a band, but um, I wasn't as obsessed with them as she was. But I thought if I put them up on my wall, that it would make me somehow more interesting and not so weird, because it was totally not my kind of thing. I didn't really like pop music all that much. A few songs by the band, but I wasn't like a legitimate fan of NSYNC. Like, I didn't go to any concerts or have any of their CDs or anything. So there was that extreme where I was posting all of their pictures on my bedroom wall, and then a church friend of ours noticed this, and he told me to take them all down because it was like idol worship. So that was sort of the other extreme. It wasn't exactly idol worship. He felt that it was, because in his belief system, um, if you have pictures on the wall, whatever it is, you're idolizing it, which is sort of true, but that wasn't why I put them up. I just happened to like the band. It's not like I worship them or anything. But that was like kind of the beginning of when I started showing early signs of it. Middle school was very hard for me because I didn't really fit in with anybody, and I was always trying so hard to fit into some group of people. And I got into a lot of difficulties with that. In fact, I was in many arguments and actual physical fights with girls because they didn't, I would say things and I didn't really mean them. Um, like one time I made a comment that sounded like it was racist, but it really wasn't. I was just making a joke, but it came out completely wrong. So, there was that social awkwardness, and I kind of always felt like I was pretending to be somebody I wasn't. High school was especially hard because I kind of was hiding who I really was. Um, I just was this academic who did everything I was told. I lived for my schoolwork pretty much. I'd go to school, come home, do my homework, go to bed. I wouldn't socialize. I'd had very few friends, and the friends I did have, they barely came over the house. I was very sheltered. And on top of all of this that I was dealing with at that age, my mother and my father, they both have mental health issues. My mom was a lot worse than my father. My mother was diagnosed um, with bipolar depression, um, and she's actually manic depressive, but I think it's more bipolar. I mean, they're interchangeable. But when I was in high school, she would write in my books. She would write all this mumbo jumbo about conspiracy theories, and she thought that her father killed Kennedy, which is like really weird stuff. And then there was this one time where she, accused me of being Saddam Hussein or something, like I was a terrorist because I didn't agree with what she was doing. And she pulled a knife on my father. She never hurt him or anything, and we did call the police, and she was put into a hospital. But with all of that chaos going on top of my father having anger issues and um, just having trouble with money, we were very poor. I was very neglected. I mean, I can't say that I ever went without food. It was more emotional neglect, but there were times where we had barely any food. And it wasn't really my dad's fault. I mean, he was responsible for the reason, he was the reason we were not doing well, but with his job, the nature of his job, which was really just part time work, he couldn't make a lot of money. And he wasn't very skilled in other arenas. He had no computer skills. He was more of a hands on type of person. And he was getting older, getting in his 50s, having a lot of health issues. So there was that too. There was that added burden of having two parents that were not physically or mentally well enough to take care of me and my siblings. Now, I'm not going to say that my parents were horrible because they weren't. I lived in a home that was full of love when there was love. I mean, when we were loving to each other, it was like full blown, we hugged and kissed and there was affection. But there was so much crap going on that it was really hard for me to develop properly. And I was emotionally stunted in my growth. I still to this day do not have my driver's license, which I really regret. And that's just something I've been putting off for a long time. That might be part of my immaturity that kind of goes along with borderline personality. But basically, I feel like I don't have an identity, or that it's been hidden from me, like I'm not really myself. And I've gone through so many changes in my life that it's like, it's really hard to cling to anything because growing up, things were so uneasy and you never know what was going to happen. One day we were living with my parents, the next day my parents got separated and I had to live with my grandparents. And that was a major, major trauma in my childhood because there were times where I wasn't allowed to see my mother. She was in the hospital, where I couldn't see my father because he only had visitation rights on Saturdays and Sundays. And I was always in the middle. I'm the oldest of three children. And from the beginning, I was always like the middle person. And sometimes the therapist when actually I was only 10 years old, giving my parents marriage advice, and it really affected me. Like, I grew up too fast. I was forced to become an adult you know, way before I should have. And I think the reason that I sometimes act childish these days is because I'm sort of making up for that. Like, I'm not able to maintain a full-time job. I have had a hard time keeping a full-time job. I can do part-time minimally, but full-time is just too much for me. And I've gone through so many different jobs because it's like I change my mind a lot. I change my mind about what I want to be and where my career is. One minute I want to be a teacher, the next minute a psychologist, and now I want to be a makeup artist, which I don't know how long that's going to last. And it's kind of scary because it's like your reality is constantly changing. What you aspire to is constantly changing. So how can you trust what you're believing in at that point? Is it true? Is it really what you want? Or is it just another phase? So it's been very hard for me to develop. Like, I set goals for myself, but it's so hard to go through the steps. And just trouble with relationships in general, trust issues, because I was abandoned many times in my childhood, so I have fear of abandonment, fear that someone's not going to be friends with me anymore if I say or do something. And mood changes, pretty swiftly. Not as sporadic as people who have a mood disorder, but it's more of like I'll go days feeling one way and then a couple days feeling another way. I've been on all kinds of medication, and so far I haven't found anything that's really helped a lot. I've found things that have gotten me through a really rough patch, but nothing that I feel is like really helpful. Like bring me to a place where I feel stable. I'm not saying I'm unstable. Maybe I am a little bit, but for the most part, I've been able to function like a normal person. It's just harder to do things that everybody else does, that everybody just does and doesn't even think about because it's what they were taught when they were young. So instinctively, I'm kind of programmed to just kind of survive and not really thrive, if that makes sense. Where I'm just doing things like the basics. I'm not really working ahead of that, like doing anything, planning anything. Um, you know, and it's kind of scary because in a few years I'm going to be 30 years old and I'm nowhere near where I thought I would be. I am 4 credits away from a bachelor's degree, which probably isn't going to happen because I owe the school money and I don't have money to pay for the class. And I've attempted this last science class so many times and I don't know what's holding me back. It's like every time I attempt it, there's some struggle and it doesn't happen. And it's like a self-defeating mentality where I feel like it's too overwhelming, I can't do it, so I quit. And that's like how I handle everything these days. And I just I'm so grateful for my husband because he has been with me through the worst times of my life and he has made me more stable than I've ever been. Cuz what I didn't get from my parents, I get from him. Not that he's like my father or anything or a parent figure. It's just he's a good example. And, I'm just so grateful for everything that he's done in my life. I don't want to make this video too long. This is just kind of an introduction to what I've been dealing with. I don't know what anyone else has been dealing with, but I invite you to leave comments or send me a message or whatever. You can follow me on different social media. I'm going to be talking about this more in future vlogs and just want to encourage anybody who is dealing with a mental illness that it's not your fault and you didn't do anything to deserve it and you're not alone. There are people out there that can help you. Maybe they don't know exactly what you're going through, but they want to help you. And that's better than not having anyone at all. It's better than feeling alone all the time. You're not alone. So I'm going to end this by saying that I hope if you are dealing with mental illness that you get the help you need and that I'm here to talk to anybody who needs help. I'm not a therapist by any means. I mean, I have a lot of issues myself, but I have a lot of experience with helping people. So please feel free to contact me. I hope you have a good night and goodbye.